We all know that real estate has created more millionaires than any other industry on the planet. We also know that it has created a lot of heartache due to mismanagement, overborrowing, and just simple life events that happen to all of us. Welcome to the Cash Flow Pro podcast. My name is Casey Brown, and I am your fearless leader. And although we might be bourbon sipping and at times foul-mouthed Southerners, we will always do our best to be honest, straightforward, and due diligent with all of the information we pass along to you. Welcome to the show. Hey there, and welcome to today's episode of Cash Flow Pro, your daily real estate investing podcast and YouTube channel. Now, as my listeners are very well aware, I always try to get names correct, so I'm going to give this a shot. I want to welcome Pancham Gupta with Mesos Capital, and he comes to us. Was just telling me they've got about $250 million worth of assets under management, and he is excited to tell his story. So Pancham, welcome. I hope I didn't butcher that too bad. I gave it my best if I did. So welcome. How are you today?
I'm doing great. Well, thank you, Casey, for having me. And no, you did not butcher it.
Awesome.
You're very, very, very close.
That's the big win for the day right there. I didn't butcher it. I got it all right. And anyhow, so why don't you start us off? Tell us a little bit about yourself, where you come from, what got you, interested in real estate, and then we'll take it from there.
Sounds good. So it's a long story. I'm gonna make it very short.
Okay.
I came to the US in 2003 to get my master's degree in computer science, and the idea at that time was that I'll get my degree, get some work experience, and then I'm gonna go back to India to start something on my own. And
Okay.
so I graduated in 2005, started working. Plan was still the same. In 2008, I got married. 2009 rolls over 2010, right? And we sell all of our furniture and we decide to go back, right? And
Okay.
we find out that my wife and I, we were expecting a baby, and we were like, you know what, it's very hard to move even houses when you're expecting, so let's delay our plan for a year. And lo and behold, I'm still here. In 2011 I decided that I would live in this country forever. And
Awesome.
so we bought all of our stuff back, whatever. And and in
I guess your wife
2000
liked that, right? She got to get rid of all her old furniture and then buy new. So she seemed like
exactly.
she was, I bet she was happy. So,
Yeah, she was very happy. And then, in 2012, I started, since I was going to live here forever, I started educating myself about, investing in this country and how to, invest in real estate. I picked up the book Rich Dad Poor Dad, and I'm sure many, you've talked about it here many times. And,
almost
I
daily.
then I picked up a cash flow quadrant, and I will tell you, those books changed my life. In 2012 and 13, I bought two houses where I live before I bought my own house. So I bought two rental properties, and then I bought my own house and got hooked into this. And it started as a hobby, but it became an addiction in a good way for me, that I was one of those fathers who was in the soccer game for the kids, and had these big headphones on, listening to podcasts like this one, to really educate myself on real estate. I would not talk to anyone. My commute was 1.5 hours each way,
Ooh.
and I would read books and listen to the podcast, educate myself. And all of my vacation days would be spent on going out, flying different places, looking at properties. And in 5 years, I had invested in five different states. I had properties which were managed by smaller properties, single families, two families, three families. um, and they were managed by property manager. And I got to a point where I was loving this stuff, and also it was getting very difficult to manage it with my full-time job. So I had to make a decision that what I want to do. And uh, it was also not very scalable. I felt that just adding one, two, three, four these properties, and trust me, it was going great, but I felt that it was too slow, and also it was taking too much time. And I on one side had a very high paying job in New York City, and on the other side I had this passion for this stuff which was not paying, not even close, like it was not even meeting my expenses in
Yeah.
any way from the cash flow. So I talked to my wife, and I was like, you know what, I want to do real estate, and talk to my parents, and they're like, are you crazy? Like, are you going to quit your more than $500,000 job and go and do this thing which is not even paying your bills, and what about the benefits and this and that? And it was, and I hear them, they were trying to protect me from me,
Yeah.
and they were also scared at the same time. So it was very hard, but I in 2019 2017 I quit my job for good, and since then I have sorry, 2019 I quit. 2017 is when I decided that I will quit in 2019. And so I quit my job, and it was a very hard process there, and I can walk you through how I got to the point to quit and convince my family. But
So there was a 2 year. So I want, but just to add context to this before you go into it, because yes, that's our. I have a lot of listeners who reach out, and that's their thing. I'm currently working a W-2 job. I get up in the morning. It's like office space. I go to my cubicle. I make good money, but I go home and it's not very. The word that I always circle this whole thing around is fulfilling. And it's not that these people hate their jobs necessarily. It's not that they don't make good money. It's that they get up every day and they feel just as empty when they get home as they did when they got to work. And so, yes, so you're saying 2017 to 2019, that was your your self-defined transition period, correct?
that is correct. Even though I wanted to do this for a very long time, but it was really that those 2 years were the redefining moment where I trained my mind to get rid of the golden handcuffs. Like you said,
Yeah.
they're making the money, right? I was making the good money, right? And I was, my job was good. Like, I did not hate my job in any way. I actually liked my
Yeah.
job,
But you had the
but it was
entrepreneurial spirit. It
exactly.
and that's a tough flame to put out. It's a tough flame to say. It's a tough box to push to the side and say, I don't really want to be it, because once you have that thought of, man, you know, anyway, proceed. I get
Yeah.
that
So
a lot.
I'll tell you, for me, and it might be very easy for some of the people that you have interviewed before, but for me, it was very hard given that it was a very high paying job and my family was not really in sync. And I myself was really, difficult for me mindset wise. So I actually hired a mindset coach to help me actually quit my job. And it's a funny story. The day I decide that, and it wasn't cheap, that coach, I go to my wife, I'm like, you know what? I've decided that I'm going to hire a coach to help me quit my job. She's like, the what?
So I'm going to
There
go
was
spend money to learn.
exactly, and there was no sound for a second, and she's like, I'm gonna hire a coach to help me quit my job. Then she was like, just go quit. You
Yeah,
know
well,
what? Yeah, why you have to spend money to
coach.
hire, to actually help you how not to make money?
Yeah, yeah. That's a fun. That's a like a parent
Yeah,
kind of thing. Where
when that happened, obviously she agreed, and I actually hired a coach, and for I worked on my mind. Basically, it was really helping me to get out of my own mind, because we have this programming that has been done over the years which is very hard to get rid of. And in 2019 I successfully quit my job. I did not, like, for the listeners who are thinking, oh, maybe in 2 years I had enough cash flow to pay my bills and that's why I quit. No, it wasn't the case. I had saved enough for 2 years, to survive 2 years, to make sure that I'm going to be able to pay my bills and still have some leftover for 2 years that I can survive. And I'll make sure those 2 years is when I'll make it, you know, uh,
Yeah.
worthwhile for myself.
Yeah. And that's so interesting because, and I oftentimes bring up on this show, like, for instance, I joined a mastermind, and through that mastermind, specifically for capital raising, specifically for capital raising for real estate. And through that mastermind, there is, in effect, a whole group of mentors, but there's a couple in particular that I'm a little closer with than I am others. And with what you're saying about, I know, while the idea that I'm going to go hire a coach to help me quit my job sounds at the at the base of everything sounds crazy, but at the same time, there's this, you're right, in your mind, and the way that if you have an entrepreneurial spirit, the hardest part is bridging that gap between, hey, I want to quit my job, to how do I fit this square peg into a round hole, the square peg being, um, the entrepreneurial spirit and chasing your dreams and doing what you want to do, and the round hole being putting food on the table and providing security and comfort and safety for my family. And when you start looking at it from a in a broad perspective, it's pretty daunting, honestly. I mean,
It is very daunting because I was at work and a lot of people, my friends, colleagues, they were also in the similar boat where they wanted to quit, but there was no path, and or they were not spending enough time to really, putting more fuel to ignite that flame forever, right?
yep,
So that's where it comes down to, that you really have to have, like, you need to know your why. The why has to be strong enough to push you to the edge where you're willing to burn the boots and go to the other side.
yep. And you've got to, and a lot of people, a lot of people get caught in the idea of rushing the prospects of quitting. And while when you finally do decide, it's like the day that I'm ready to walk in and quit that W-2. Now, I have to be mindful how I tread into this water, because that's not my story. I didn't come from a W-2 in hopes
I see.
of that. So I guess, but I came from a very similar mind shift, where I woke up one day, I was feeling like my path was a little different, where I felt like this was the next rung to my career, was moving into syndications, and helping people generate leads through all kinds of different sources. And so, but at the same time, I think that mind shift is basically has to be the same. It's virtually the same thing, just a different set of circumstances. Um,
Absolutely,
but
absolutely.
but yeah, so that's interesting. And then and so I'm assuming, was your wife then on board?
Yeah, so it was a long process. Like, during the time when I was going through this coaching to help my own mind, I was preparing her too, and she was on board eventually. My parents, and if you were to ask me today, or if you ask her today, that a good decision, she would be like, we should have done it sooner.
Yeah,
And just the kind of freedom you get, the time freedom, the location freedom, and as well as we're at a point where we have reached financial freedom as well. uh, it's just spending time with the kids, going to their games. This morning when we are recording this, my son had a field day and he wanted us to come, and you can do that before.
yep,
You couldn't do that because I was at work. And yeah, I know COVID has changed a lot of things where a lot of people are working from home, and this might be very possible now. Before, when I quit in 2019, just 6 months before COVID, and that's another story in its own, in its own, where uh, COVID hit right after 6 months. And at
yeah,
the time, if you really remember, things were like, it was like, oh, what's going to happen? The world is coming down, right?
yeah,
So it was scary, scary time. But yeah, I love these freedoms and really being able to decide your own time.
yeah. And I oftentimes say on this show, as well as marketers, because that's at the end of the day, that's what I enjoy about that. Marketing is kind of
Yeah.
like the that's kind of like the fringe benefit of doing this business is then you get to be a marketer, and you get to be a marketer that tests and has fun and tries different things and this, that, and the other. But as marketers, we have this I had this bad habit, and I'm sure that this is probably a common thread that we all share, is um, I like to find the line and walk absolutely positively as close as I possibly can to that line, sometimes even reaching my hand over, and do you know what I'm saying? So
Exactly.
you really push those
Boundaries.
boundaries, and as you push those boundaries, you realize that, man, I can get out here and do this. Because the thing is that going back to those prior beliefs, like you had stated before you got into the businesses, there's a lot of people out there that think, okay, let's just say a 300 unit apartment complex, okay, 300 doors, it's full, it's bringing in it's bringing in a certain amount of money, it's costing a certain amount of money, and there's a certain amount of profit being made. And we're conditioned to believe that, man, you can't do that kind of stuff. You need to focus on, you can't go outside whatever your comfort zone is. And while then you say right there, how many years and $250 million under assets under management? I mean, that's unbelievable. That's
Right.
that's
4 years,
that's
5 years. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, $50 million a year, and you look down to that's $1 million a week. I mean, that's so $1 million a week. You for 5 years, you have. It's obviously a little bit less than that, but rounding purposes in my head. But
Yeah.
what I'm getting at is that's the kind of stuff that these dreams are made of. And with that kind of, it seems to me like that round peg started kind of getting a circular look to it, and you figured out how to make it work. um, that's
Yeah.
that's fabulous, my man. That's awesome. I mean, I'm tickled to death to hear that story. So, talk us now into a little bit about Misos Capital, and what maybe your strategy kind of is circled around, and what type of assets you look at, and then maybe even lead us into a little bit of how you raised your first capital.
Sure. So, Misos Capital, we are focused on buying value add multifamily in 6 MSAs in the Southeast, mainly
Okay.
2 states, North Carolina and Florida, Raleigh, Charlotte, Wilmington in North Carolina, and Tampa, Orlando, and Jacksonville in Florida.
Okay.
These are the 6 MSAs that we are focused in from the very beginning. And we do have properties in some other places too, but these are the main focus. And our goal is to really, uh, buy value add multifamily and add value, and then exit or do a capital event and return capital to the investors, right? And
Okay.
in the process, make the property better and what
If
it
you do a
was before.
refinance, does the investor hold their position or no?
Yeah, they hold their equity, correct.
Awesome.
So that's what we do in a very at a very high level. And your question on how did we raise our first capital? So going back to that story in 2017, we I was doing real estate already, right? I was buying properties. My colleagues, my friends already knew what I was doing, and I found my partner at my company where I worked. So both of us were doing our own thing in real estate separately. When we joined hands together, we said, you know what, let's do a couple of flip projects and some of the things, smaller projects together. We did that, and our friends and family at the time, they all wanted to put money with us. We didn't take any money at the time, but that was a kind of a light bulb moment, right? At one point, when we looked into syndications, uh, we kind of reached out to them, and we decided that we are going to do syndication. So our very first deal was, a $2 million deal, 44 units, and we raised about 781,000 for that deal,
Wow.
and all of that money came from our friends, family, and colleagues.
Wow.
101% of that. And we had to reach out to people who we hadn't reached out before.
Yep.
But there were also people there who were already ready to invest with us, because when we bought that 44 unit property, there was a 78 unit property before that, which we were under contract on to buy. We did our due diligence and we were preparing our investors about that particular property, and they were okay investing in that. But that deal did not go through. We lost money on that. That's another story. But we basically had people primed up, ready to go
chomping.
when we actually found something that we were closing on.
Yep. Yep. And I'll tell you, that's a talent in and of itself, because a lot of times, so one of the biggest, I guess, elephants in the room for me when I came in was, how do you go from, so basically you sit down and you've got one of two options. You either raise capital and you take it immediately, or you soft commit and then
Correct.
you do capital calls. And
Hi, this is Casey Brown, host of the Cash Flow Pro podcast and YouTube channel. Have you been thinking about investing in real estate but just don't know where to begin? I'd like to help by inviting you to check out our website at www.3000capital.com. There you will find an array of material that will help you learn all about real estate syndication. And while you're there, be sure to check out our free video series download titled 5 Must-Know Keys to Success in Passive Real Estate Investing. I'd also like to personally thank you for making Cash Flow Pro part of your day. Now, back to the show.
somewhere in between those two, which there's really, so that's, to me, I was like, okay, so do you take the money immediately and have to start paying higher interest than what you can get at the bank, or do you hold the,
Commitment, like soft
yeah, the
commits.
commitment of some sort, which may or may not be fulfilled? And that's when a lot of guys were saying, you need to, that's why you need to raise a third to half more than
Correct.
what you actually need. So yeah, man, I mean, that's awesome. So how did, which route did you go? Did you get soft commitments? So you had, well, but you had soft commitments for a deal that was under contract, or you had commitments for a deal that was under contract, and then was able to just like make an immediate pivot and get started on something else, right?
Right, we did that, and also even now that's what we do. I mean, we do have a fund. It's a purpose of that fund is slightly different, but for all of our multifamily deals, what we do is we do exactly that, to this date, where once we have a deal, we go under contract and we do our due diligence. And once we are good with the due diligence, at that point, we will release the deal to the investors and we will get soft commits. And we will try to go over, like you said, from whatever the commitment is. If we need 10 million for a deal, we'll try to get to 12 to 13 million so that
So you're
we
thinking, you're thinking like 20%. So
yeah.
you all think, and I'm sure the longer that you do that, the less you
Drop offs gets
go over.
less, so that's why, yeah, before we had high drop offs. Now we have gone through full cycle on 3 deals already and 2 are under contract to be sold. So all these people are bringing their friends, family along, and their friends of friends and all that. So I think that drop off goes lower. I'll tell you, we had a huge drop off for one of our deals that we did during COVID. So March 2020 is when COVID hit. We were under contract to buy a deal in Raleigh, North Carolina, and I still remember to this day. That date is crystal clear in my head. Is March 9th, 2020 is
Yep,
when we released our deal. And March 9th, 2020 was the week when the Dow had the biggest drop in the history of Dow.
yep.
Okay, so uh, the same day when we released our deal, and our raise was about 5 million on that. And I remember a lot of people were very scared because of that, and and rightfully so, right? And we actually ended up reducing, getting the reduction in price. Seller was scared too. All of those things happened, and we ended up doing the deal. But to answer your question, yeah, we did have a big drop off, but we had long time there
Sure,
to
sure. Yeah.
yeah.
And that's got to be, I mean, when you start looking at that, and again, those stories are kind of what is shaping. That's, I talk about common threads all the time, and that's kind of the common thread again, that that I feel like all syndicators have in common is a COVID story of some kind,
Yeah.
because it was such a defining moment, and syndications and really post the Jobs Act, um, are still kind of in their infancy. Really, I mean, maybe a little bit. They're getting a little bit more advanced every day as more people figure out what they are and how they work and the structures that need to be put in place. But that was, there's so many people that have that COVID story about everything going and churning and going. They're buying, they're doing, they're putting LOIs, they're raising money, they're doing down payments, they're putting earnest money up, and then all of a sudden we're all standing there in that however long after Rudy Gobert got tested in the NBA, did the entire world shut down? Like the whole
Yeah.
world was a boom, and
Yeah.
we were all of a sudden locked at home. Nobody was on the road, and so
It
and then
was crazy. That time was crazy.
you're sitting there with however much earnest money out in deals, and just have no idea which way to turn. So, but so tell us, so where are you at right now? Are you currently still raising capital from friends and family? Do you have a source, or have you gone outside of your bubble, I guess, to raise outside capital?
Yeah, we have, and we did that some time ago. That was the only way to scale. Like, we do 506c
Hmm.
syndications where we also advertise, and because we were getting so many referrals, it's very hard to know everybody. So we have friends, and so all of those guys, like our own bubble, which got bigger,
Hmm.
and then we also bring on one or two partners with us who have their own network, and they bring in
Where do you
capital. So
where do you find new investors? Purely referral?
purely, yeah. So far, it's been only referral for us.
And
Like,
that's
we don't do any marketing. We started marketing this year a little bit. It's not yielding any result. It's
Yep,
mainly marketing. Sorry, referrals.
referrals.
Really.
Yeah, marketing is a play that is, it's obviously a different path. Now referrals, but ultimately at the end of the day, the referrals, you have to have the referrals to in order to keep chug a lugging forward. But
Exactly.
the
And we,
marketing,
we are engineers. Sorry to cut you off there. We are engineers, so me and my partner, and we are really bad at marketing.
I got you.
That's another thing. So we did hire an outside agency for that this year. Um, so we'll see how that goes. Just started on that.
Yeah, yeah, and if you can find somebody that can, because I'll just a little marketing tip for the listeners. One of the biggest takeaways from a book that I recently read, which I've read it like 5 times, so this is the last time I recently read this book, Traffic Secrets by Russell Brunson. It talks
Mhm.
about the biggest, one of the things that the defining moments of the book for me was when you realize that when you're advertising, like for instance this podcast, okay, I have to be aligned with people that are listening to podcasts. I can't take an advertisement for this podcast and go put it on Instagram. I can. Obviously, it's perfectly legal and you can do anything you want to do as far as that's concerned. But it's very difficult to move people from one marketing channel to another and have there be any resonation of listenership, I guess, if you will. And so, or like for instance, if people that digest Instagram, it's very difficult to move them to say TikTok. And I mean, I guess that was probably a little easier than what I'm talking about. But I guess what I'm getting at is marketing is a very, very finicky, very, I don't know. It's just it's tough. It's really tough. But if you hired an outside
Yeah.
company, I wish you all the best. I hope that picks up, because it seems like you're just once you all put a little fan to the flame, you'll get rocking and rolling as far as that goes.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. We'll see how that goes.
So
So yeah. Go ahead.
go ahead,
Sorry.
go ahead, go ahead.
Yeah, no, to answer your question, so where we are like today, we are very actively buying, given what has happened in recently in the market because of rates rising, market dropping, similar kind of, it's not COVID kind of event, right?
Yeah.
Obviously, very, 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 very far from it. But from the stock market point of view, it is definitely quite people are scared,
Yep.
let's put it that way, right? So our strategy has changed on the 6 MSAs that I was talking about. We are only focused on great locations within those MSAs.
Hmm.
So we are only at this point, like my partner, he's moving and I'm moving to Florida. I live in New York right now.
Oh, I'm
And the
sorry.
reason I'm moving is that to be closer to the properties and being there to make sure.
No, no, I don't want to hear that. The reason I'm moving to Florida, I want to be closer to my properties. Come
No,
on.
I want to be in Florida. And, you know,
I don't blame you. That's exactly now. That's the answer I was looking for.
yeah, no, that's the really, it's a lifestyle choice. Like I was referring to before, now we
Yeah.
have the option of living where we want to live. So
Yes,
that's why,
absolutely. No, I'm
yeah.
just picking that. That's great. I admire that, and that's a big move too. I mean, that's almost an entire culture shock move in a way from New York City to anywhere in Florida, really. But sorry. So there's a couple of questions that we ask every guest that comes on the show, and there's no right or wrong answer. But without, I try to tell people don't use Rich Dad Poor Dad and don't say the Bible. But what is the best book that you are currently reading or have read or you recommend?
Yeah, so I'm a voracious reader, so I read a lot of books. And right now that I'm reading, and I think has changed my, is changing me,
Mhm.
is called Atomic Habits
Yep.
by James Clear. And one book I would highly recommend that people who are thinking of quitting their job, right, and are kind of struggling with that is and book that helped me was Turning Pro by Stephen Pressfield. It's like turning professional, and the way he breaks it down, like who is a professional and who is not.
Yep.
It's really good, and it's a thin book, but it's very heavy. Like a lot of meaning to it. That really helped me.
Great. That's awesome. Now, what is a dream vacation that you have either taken or hope to take?
So one that I've taken is our Italy trip. That was all pre-COVID, and we went and had family coming over from India. So it was a lot of fun. And
That's kind of a
my
meet in the middle, isn't it?
yeah, exactly, exactly. So that was one that we really loved, and for me, it's like exploring Europe and generally South America. I would is really something that I want to do.
Awesome,
I
man.
like
That's
traveling.
great. Yeah, my wife and I love Europe. Everything Europe, European to us. We want to explore and see and do, and
Yeah.
we've been from Italy to Romania, and we love it just
Oh wow.
everywhere over there. So, well, listen, if the listeners heard something that resonated with them, or they want to reach out to you at Mesos Capital, what is the best way for somebody who wants to learn more to get in touch with you?
Sure, they can reach out. They can go to mesoscapital.com, mesoscapital.com, or they can email me at my first name dot last name, which is pancham.gupta at mesoscapital.com.
Awesome. We will put that in the show notes and make sure that if somebody needs to get a hold of you or wants to get a hold of you to learn more, that they certainly can. So, Pancham, thank you so much for your time and good luck on the move to Florida. I know I feel so sorry for you that you're going to have to go down there and put up with all that sunshine and all of that decent weather. We'll be praying for you, okay? Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much for taking the time to be on the show today.
Well, thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Have a good day. Cashflow Pro is hosted by Casey Brown, founder and CEO of 3000 Capital, a commercial real estate investment firm committed to providing its investors with ongoing cash flow and helping them build long-term wealth. If you enjoyed today's podcast, make sure to hit that subscribe button so you'll be notified about all our future episodes. You can find more information about us and our investment philosophy by clicking the link in the show notes below. Thanks for listening.